This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Zia and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. You can help us make the next episode happen by joining us at dmounion.com or digmeoutunion.com. Jay? Jay, are you here? No, you're not. You're stuck in a traffic jam for our very special Thanksgiving episode that we've been doing. This is our third anniversary of our Thankful for Music in the year that has passed. In 2020, we did it because of COVID lockdown. We were all bored at home, tired of watching live streams of artists playing acoustic guitar. So we decided to do a good old-fashioned Zoom call like we were used to at that point. And then we continued it on in 2021, and we're doing it again this year. We've got a nice round table, a big, healthy Thanksgiving. Well, mostly healthy. Sorry, Marissa. Round table of folks joining us from all over. Welcome back. I'm going to rattle them off. Welcome back, Chip Midnight. Welcome back, Phil Fleming. Welcome back, Ian McIver. Welcome back, Ryan Allen. Welcome back, Marissa Buxbaum. And welcome for the first time, I believe, Bill Davison. How are you? Mr.
Yeah,
Davison,
good. Thanks for having me here.
Awesome.
I am indeed, yes.
Everybody who has listened to this show knows that we talk about albums that came out in the 90s, but however, we do listen to new music. I know that's shocking, but it shouldn't be, because in our box newsletter that comes out every week, we have 2 reviews of new releases, whether those are albums or movies or TV shows or books or what have you. We're going to be talking mostly about music, but if somebody has a music book that they've read or documentary or something like that, feel free to bring that up. I have a list. I'm sure you all have a list. So I'm just going to go around and let's just get this party started with, I'm going to start with, let's see if I can do this alphabetically by last name. Ryan Allen, give me one of your albums that you're thankful for in 2022 and tell us why.
I feel like the 90s went very hard in 2022. So I have to start with a band that I loved in the 90s. I saw them, the first time I saw them was opening for Weezer I guess it would have been a theater tour, so like 96 maybe or something. But Archers of Loaf is the name of the band, and they put a new record out this year called Reason and Decline. And I saw a lot of my friends and people like sort of like slighting it for not being like a facsimile of what they were doing in the 90s, but I think it's a fantastic record. It's anthemic but dynamic, and it really kind of like really puts a focus on songwriting in a way that I think Eric Bachman, who's the sort of lead singer of Archers of Loaf, really dug deep into with the Crooked Fingers and his solo work. But it really is that like kind of mash between what he was doing in Crooked Fingers and what Archers was doing in the 90s. And it's lyrics are really poignant and political and sort of pissed off. And that's kind of where the Archers thing kind of seeps in. But the songs are just really like composed really well. And there's a good energy there. And it's just it's a great return record. It's not a return to form, I would say necessarily, but it's an awesome record for a band that hasn't made one in like 25 years.
I agree. I reviewed that for the box and I thought it was excellent. Did anybody else check out the new Archers album?
I interviewed Eric for the new issue of Big Takeover on newsstands soon.
Excellent. Everybody get their plugs in. Make sure you get your plugs in when you get a chance. Marissa, what's an album that you're thankful for in 2022?
I'm sure you already know the answer, Tim. But any year in which the Afghan Whigs release a new record and go on a tour is a good year for me. So I'm incredibly thankful for How Do You Burn, which is my favorite Afghan Whigs album that they have released since their reunion in 2012, I want to say. So it's been 10 years now. It's crazy, wild to think about. Also crazy to think that I've now seen the Afghan Whigs more times live than I have the Twilight Singers, and I came into Greg Dooley's music as a Twilight Singers fan originally. But this album is it feels to me almost like a synthesis of everything that he's done that I love the most. It really leans into that sort of 70s AOR feel. It's a great driving down an open highway with a lead foot record. It's got elements of Powder Burns in there. It's got some 1965 in there. The production is beautiful and glossy, and it's everything I could have possibly wanted out of a new Whigs record. And then I got to see large chunks of it performed live in I think 7 total cities in 2022. So that's my pick. If I had to pick one record, it's How Do You Burn?
Well, one for now, and then we'll get into our lists as we go through. Bill, why don't you share with us an album?
Let's see. Well, I recently picked up the 1993 One and Done album by the Semantics, Power Bill, featuring Will Owsley. I'm going to have to pretend I really remembered everything that I was going to say about this band by looking at Wikipedia. Millard Powers, Jody Spence, and later Zach Starkey. It's great. I mean, I like Will Owsley's stuff. I heard the Owsley record when it came out. I was working at a record store. We used to play it always. And I didn't dislike hearing it after we played it 10 million times. It was really fun to finally find this record. I think I actually had to order it. Well, I ordered it through Amazon, but I think it came from Japan, or at least it came from overseas. It took forever to get here, but it did get here. Pretty amazing. It's just a lot of fun. Great songwriting, great performance. Maybe not quite as hard as a lot of the stuff the Dig Me Out reviews, but it's certainly got a lot of energy. And if you enjoy power pop, which I do, I recommend it.
Excellent. Yeah, I've been interested to check out more of his stuff, Will Owsley, because I remember liking that record and need to get into more of his songwriting. Phil, what you got for us?
Well, I mean, and I'm just starting to get into it, but Suede's Autofiction. I got to see them last week, and it was just mind blowing. And to think that they ended the U.S. tour in the very space where all of their crap was stolen 25 years prior, just made a great cap on their entire U.S. career, at least. But yeah, it just reignited my fandom of Suede. I mean, I went to that show more of a Mannix fan, but oh my god, they just totally mopped the floor with Mannix.
I agree with you. Actually, like, who opened for you? Because I saw them in Austin and Suede opened.
Mannix opened.
Okay, so there was definitely a Suede crowd, which I was not expecting in Austin, Texas, because some people left after Suede played.
Oh, wow.
Which I was like, first of all, when are you ever going to see the Mannix again? But I didn't understand it. But they put on such different shows. Like Jay was saying, I'll speak for Jay here since he's not here. The energy that Suede put on was amazing, but the Mannix really showcased their songwriting skills, like how good their songs are. Writing, 3-4 minute long singles that for some reason just never made a dent here, but they basically played a greatest hits set, and it was
absolutely
awesome.
Yeah, they were a little more they were a little more jumpy and looser, probably because it was like the second to last show of the tour.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they looked like they enjoyed themselves. I mean, it was definitely more of a Suede crowd, but they were very receptive to Mannix, and I mean, they played a sit down theater, so I don't know what the types of venues that they played on the rest of the tour, if there were more like open rooms or not, but the theater that they played was definitely not an open room. No GA there.
Ian, tell us one album from this year that you're thankful for.
Got a whole bunch. I mean, I did 10 for your box news.
Well, we're gonna get to those. I want one right now because I got categories.
I'm gonna go Noise Units, Cheeba City Blues. Was a posthumous release for Jeremy Uncle that Bill Lee released. I mean, this was material that was done. I mean, the rumor started 2013, 2014 after Echo Genetic was released, and kind of picked up a bit more after some of the touring cycles were done. So I was looking forward to it, and then stuff got shelved. Some stuff got reused on a couple of Frontline Assembly releases and that. But it's nice when you honor a fallen band member, and it's like it's nothing that's going to light the world, but I mean, it's a nice gesture for the fans.
Excellent. Chip.
All right.
What you got?
So I have the Mommy Heads Genius Killer. So I was not really all that familiar with the Mommy Heads. I heard them in 97, 98, whenever the Geffen Records self-titled album came out, but got a press release earlier this year that they were going to re-release some early stuff, and decided that I would check them out. And I think that was maybe the second or third interview I did for Dig Me Out, talking to a 90s artist. And like I said, I didn't really know a whole lot about them. Fascinating history. They've been around forever. They've been really prolific the last 5, 6, 7 years. Adam, the singer, writes and records everything, has access to a studio. They're not chained to a label anymore, so they put stuff out when and how they want, and they just kind of do it. I would say for fun, but they do it for more than just fun, but they do it for fun. But anybody who has not heard the Mommy Heads Genius Killer, which I imagine not a ton of people have heard, very, I just wrote down a list of bands that I would sort of put them in the same category. It's kind of got like more, I say contemporary for the Dig Me Out crowd, Eels and the Posies and maybe Jellyfish. But also ELO, Supertramp. It's just like that power pop. And again, they've gone through a lot of different sounds, but Genius Killer kind of encapsulates all of that kind of music, all within one record.
Excellent. I don't know what Jay's pick is, but if I reviewed a lot of stuff for the box this year, and I had a lot of really good records that I checked out, but the one I was thankful for the most was the return of the Hellacopters, because that band never got their due here in the States. And I just, in the last year, went back and started revisiting the whole catalog from front to, and even when they were around, I sort of started to trail my interest on like the last one or two records. Like I started moving on to other things. And so I didn't even give those records a full listen. And now that I've gone back to them, it just makes me appreciate them coming back. And I know that Nikki Royale tried to do some other stuff with a different band, and that didn't quite catch on the same way that the Hellacopters did. So I'm really thankful that that band is back together, because I think more just like straight ahead rock and roll is definitely a good thing.
Absolutely. I would have picked Hellacopters if I hadn't just seen Suede.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that you and Marissa picked two of my other big picks this year, so I'm glad you guys did, because it makes me talk about the Hellacopters. So here's my question: is there an album, and it doesn't necessarily have to be 80s 90s related, it could be 80s 90s influenced if you want to go that direction, but was there a record that you were surprised by that came out this year? You were like, I had no idea this was coming out, and I had no idea that I even liked this band, and this record is totally awesome, and you are thrilled that you got to check out this record. I'll give you an example. I never gave The Fix much of a listen beyond One Thing Leads to Another, and they put out a record this year called Every 5 Seconds. And I thought it was amazing. Like, it's just super crafty songwriting in the same way that the Vapors put out a record like a year or two ago, and kind of wasn't expecting anything. And then it's just like chock full of really good songs. That was it for me. Like, I had no idea that the Fix were that good. So I actually went out and got I went to the record store, and the records are like $1. I mean, you can buy Fix records pretty cheaply in good shape. So I grabbed a bunch of Fix records, and I was like, man, I really like, they're not mentioned in the same category as like Midnight Oil or these other, 80s new wave bands. But definitely a very cool band. So I'm going to throw it out. Does someone have a pick for a band or an album that they discovered this year that was not on their radar, and they're really happy they did? No. Chip?
Yeah, similar to you, Tim. I was mentioning before you started recording, I interviewed about 60 bands this year, and mm-hmm. I love talking to bands, obviously. So when something hits my inbox, especially when it's something that relates to the 80s or 90s, it's always a thrill to interview a band that I might have stood in front of my bedroom mirror and played air guitar to, or sang into a hairbrush to, or pretended like I was the singer. And I had the opportunity to interview the guitar player from Aha, and they put out a new record last month, 2 months ago, mm-hmm. It's really, really good. And that's a band that I think that I had sort of written off, that the first two CDs I ever bought were Aha's Hunting High and Low and Dawkins' Under Lock and Key. I still have the Dawkins CD. I don't have the Aha CD, but they were, at the time of my first CD player, they were a big band for me, probably just for the single, to be honest. I don't know that I'm sure I must have listened to the rest of the record, but I listened for Take On Me. But when that hit my inbox and I put in a request, and they were like, yeah, you can interview somebody from the band. That was, I spent a lot of time listening to that record, and it's really good. It's very mature sounding. They definitely, it's very, I'm 51, and it fits very much in what a 51-year-old should be listening to, I think.
It hit your demographic correctly.
Yes. Yeah.
Who else has one that took you by surprise that you're thankful for? Ian.
I wouldn't say the material's a surprise, but the Susie and the Banshees compilation that came out, that came out of nowhere once that was announced, it was like, oh wow. And of course, give credit to the popularity of Stranger Things and how they're resurrecting 80s material. I'm sure Kate Bush is quite thankful of that right now, but and that came as a surprise to me, but not just the fact that it's following Stranger Things. It's like they didn't go for the low-hanging fruit of, oh, here's another singles compilation that everyone has. they did well. I mean, I didn't hear of Steve or Budget contributing. As everything I read, it was okay. This is just Susie, but like she dug deep. I mean, there's album tracks, B-sides, there's a couple of singles, but like it's like, okay, here's something for the fans, and here's something to introduce. And I mean, the Banshees have always had this multifaceted side to them, where it's like they can go in one direction or another, and it just depends on what the mood is. But and then afterwards, it's like, oh, there's rumors. Okay, they might be getting back together. There might be a tour in 2023, and it's like, oh, I'm down for that. I mean, I've always said if they ever got back together, I'd be buying the tickets. So that comes true. I've got I guess I better make space on my credit card. Ticketmaster's a bit picky right now.
Anyone else have a pick they would like to share with the audience? Bill, take your mute off.
Am I unmuted now? Did I do it?
You're
okay.
Unmuted now.
So I picked up a 1999 album by Archer Pruitt. I think I had first heard him on Pandora, so I'm dating myself in digital sense. And I didn't really know anything about him, and I was at a record store in Vermont, and I saw this, and I thought, oh, that's cool. I'll see, see what else he's done. I'm not that familiar, and the record's called White Sky, came out in '99, and it was really interesting. Like, definitely not what did I describe it? Not words escape me. I guess I'm used to listening to genre stuff, and it's easy to sort of pick out. Like power pop's a favorite of mine, and this record has a lot more instrumentation, a lot more sort of thought into the songwriting and recording. And I don't know, I was surprised by it. When I'm shopping in record stores, sometimes I just look for something that seems like it might be interesting, but I don't have a lot of expectations of it. And this was good. I don't know why I should sound surprised about it, but again, I didn't really think much of it, but I was very surprised.
Excellent. Anyone else?
I've got one.
Okay.
So in the mid 90s, I was very into emo, and when you get into emo in the mid 90s, you start to investigate different kind of factions of where it comes from. And I sort of stumbled into the Revelation Records universe. But some of that shit was like very, like, way too heavy for me and like too tough guy. And I was just like, I shouldn't be, this is not for me, But I've always, kind of kept my eye on things that come out on that label for whatever reason. And I stumbled upon this band called Praise, who are on Revelation. And they are sort of doing this. I guess they have the drummer to that band, Turnstile, who are sort of like a popular heavy band. Anyway, this band Praise is doing this sort of Discord, like 80s Revolution summer era Discord sound in a way that like I haven't heard anybody do since those bands were doing it. So definitely like have like a Embrace and One Last Wish and Rites of Spring and like a Dag Nasty Gray Matter kind of influence. So like the catchier, poppier side of DC hardcore. But it's a really great record. 10 like short, catchy, kind of like hardcore influence songs. But I just wasn't expecting a band in like 2022 to be so specifically referencing something that was so short-lived in like the mid 80s in Washington, DC, that when I listened to the single and then sort of stumbled into the record, like it's executed so perfectly that you think you're listening to a Discord record in 1986. And and the other thing about it that's cool is it's like super positive. So it's like very uplifting and like positive lyrics, and just like when hardcore can so easily like go into that, like, fuck the world, like mindset. It's really cool to hear a band sort of like, again, like referencing that like Revolution Summer, like, PMA approach, it was refreshing to hear for sure. So I would highly recommend checking out Praise.
That made me think of one, Tim. A great follow-up to what Ryan was saying was a band that I had only ever read about. And, I'm thankful for Spotify. I know that maybe a lot of artists probably aren't thankful for it, but I am. A band that I had never listened to because I don't think I'd ever come across any of their music. And before I say that, I'm a big Girls Against Boys fan, and I knew that their background, I knew that they had started off in that hardcore DC scene with the band Soulside, but I had never heard Soulside. And, in the 90s, I don't remember ever running across anything by Soulside, and they just put a new record out like 2 weeks ago. So it was my first time I've ever heard Soulside, and being a Girls Against Boys fan, like it wasn't what I was expecting. It wasn't hardcore like I was expecting. I think that's what I sort of expected. And I've only had a chance to listen to it twice, but I was very thankful to come across that one just recently, and it had a chance to like actually pull it up on my phone and not have to search for it.
The kind that wrenches and twists your gut, twist and shout. The kind, like I said, that some would rebut. Something to that blood. I've never seen times like these before. It's a chance to say goodbye to a war that you did for. Let's burn the fuse. Let's burn the fuse like a fire. If you refuse, it's yours to lose, but it's a moment when we can finally not be used.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Anyone else want to throw out a?
Also on Ryan's Revelation Records thing, I kind of rediscovered Sensefield, who had a couple records on Revelation. I mean, they had stuff on other labels before and after, but how I missed that, especially around the late 90s, I was genuinely surprised. But the album Building is amazing.
Yes, and we've done a Sensefield album on this podcast. I don't remember the title of it, or it might have been Building, or it might have been one of the other ones. I don't recall because that was more than a few years ago.
Yeah, that was an earlier episode
in the before times. Well, let's talk about what else is on our lists for records that you're thankful for in 2022. I'm gonna look at my screen here and say, Marissa, give me some more records that you're thankful for in 2022.
That fucking Spoon album.
It's a great way to introduce it.
Holy shit. No, but that was my reaction to it, right? And I think, and I see everybody laughing that that was probably the universal reaction.
You're not wrong.
At least for people who love 4 chords and a backbeat, you know what I mean? Like, it's not reinventing the wheel, but it's at the same time inventive, and as fiendishly clever as Spoon has always been, and the songs themselves are just so catchy, and it is a front to back, I don't skip any songs experience. I put my headphones on and I just go with it, and it came so alive. The live show that I saw them, I was very fortunate to get into that last minute Baby's All Right show, which was, I think, probably the only opportunity I'll ever have to see Spoon in a club that fits like 200 people or something.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
But the album is just it's a classic. You know, how often do you get a release that's so instantly recognizable as a classic from a band that's been active since Spoon has been around since the late 80s, right?
Late 90s. Telephono came out in 96. That was the first.
Okay, I'm gonna blame my COVID brain for that one.
That's okay.
But they've been, you know, doing essentially the same kind of music since then. Haven't really
that angular indie pop. Yeah.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and they just keep refining it into something more and more like itself. Like it is this platonic ideal of Spoon that album was.
And for the listeners, the album's called Lucifer on the Sofa.
Yes, sorry that I have also
not that fucking Spoon album.
That fucking Spoon album, Lucifer on the Sofa. It's magnificent.
I'm a big fan of the run from Kill the Moonlight, Gimme Fiction, Ga 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 Ga. And to me, that's up there with that run of albums.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think
favorite.
they've ever released a record where I thought, you know, this is bad. I have to leave it, as opposed to, you know, there are ones that I feel more or less strongly about. And that's honestly, that's tough.
Yep.
Just pure statistics are working against you. The Afghan Whigs have also never released a bad album, but.
Well, that's true. I look at this band in the same way with the Whigs. There are no bad albums. There's just which ones work best for you, like which ones connect with you best. And that might be
right.
3 albums you might like are completely different from 3 albums somebody else might like, but none of them are bad.
Right. There's no, I'm trying to think of like an equivalent universally reviled like 90s flop. Guys, give me something to work with here.
Fairweather Johnson.
Okay, yeah. So it's no Fairweather Johnson.
There you go.
There's nothing in the catalog that is equivalent.
Oh my god.
What else you got as far as your picks?
Me personally, the only one that I can think of off the top of my head right at this very moment, still vaguely feverish, is that fucking Sloan album.
Steady.
Yeah.
Yes. Also, just the Canadian Beatles fetishists, they never let me down.
Make it real life. Magical thinking. Message from the other side. Feelings that won't be denied. Believing in it all along. I think it and I can't be wrong. Unrelated yet connected. Supernatural effects.
I don't think Sloan has ever released an outright bad record either.
I agree with you. Totally with you there. And I think it sounded at least like an album when I was listening to the lyrics that is sort of directly talking about the pandemic. There are like little snippets of lyrics in there that are, you know, talking about like, you know, being places with your masks on and stuff. And that, you know, I thought that my reaction to that might be maybe more negative than it actually wound up being. Like it's not timeless because of that. It's very much of the circumstances that produced it, but it was still this enjoyable, very lighthearted, uplifting listen, and 5 or 6 songs that just scream, you know, infectious hit single to me.
Well, one of the things I liked best about that one was that the drums were recorded like on a Tascam 4 track.
Really?
Yeah.
They went lo-fi.
Well, just on the drums.
Just on the drums.
That's interesting.
get-
I wonder why they made that decision.
Probably because they all did their parts at home.
Oh, yeah.
Necessity is the mother of
Yeah.
lo-fi invention.
Yeah.
Or
There you go.
regression, I guess.
Ryan, what do you got? What a couple picks that you got?
Hey, Tim. Yeah, I got some picks. I have to agree. The Sloan record is probably their strongest record in the last few. I mean,
Oh yeah, easily since Navy Blues.
I disagree,
Yeah.
but still very strong. And, you know, I continue to sort of like be impressed at how consistently great they really are. But yeah, great record. Also have to agree with the Spoon record. But some more on my list. I really liked that Smile record, or The Smile. That was another that could have been the answer to the last question about something that surprised you. I didn't think it would be bad, but I was surprised to hear kind of how much fun those two were having making music. Like it sounds like two people, one in particular who's sort of known for being miserable. At least from a like media amplification perspective, just sound like they're having like a blast making these sort of weird songs. So I like that record a lot. The Superchunk record is really great. Probably a little underrated, actually. It's a little more laid back. It's kind of like their version of like a Flying Nun record, something that would have come out of New Zealand in the 90s. There's more acoustic guitar on it. It's kind of janglier. Not a lot of like raging Superchunk, like typical Superchunk songs, but still really well written. That has definitely pandemic references all over it, but in a way that's not like cringy at all. The Plosives record is a ripper. That's Rob Crow from Pinback and a bunch of other bands, and John Rees from Rocket from the Crypt and Hot Snakes. It's just like a super solid punk record. Rob singing on it is really, really good. And the songs are basically, it's like a lost Hot Snakes record without Rick Froberg singing. And it's really good. One record that, and I guess I'll end with this. I could keep going, but that I feel like I didn't give it enough of a chance, but whenever I hear something sort of pop up on a playlist or whatever, that's 90s adjacent, that I think I just need to spend more time with, but there's like a lot of glimmers of greatness on it, is that Urge Overkill record. I love Saturation. It's one of my favorite 90s records. It's just one of my favorite records. But it's good. It's just, I just like the idea of these bands sort of like continuing to push on and, continue to create good music. All those bands I listed fall into that category, but I wasn't expecting Urge to make a return. And while I think it's probably too long and there's probably some crappy songs on it, there's some really great moments that I just feel like need to be revealed to me more. So my commitment is to listen to that record more.
They just needed to not have that George Michael cover.
I like that.
I didn't like that.
Oh man. Pay your respects to the legend.
Yes, exactly.
He wrote Freedom, dude. One of the best jams.
And I don't disagree, but their take on it was not very good.
All right.
Let's save this for the hot take
the rest
section
of the record was actually really good.
Of the Discord here. We don't need to bring the hot takes out here into public. This is for family. Well, as Dom Toretto would say. Ian, got a couple that you'd like to share?
Oh yeah, like I said, I did 10 reviews for you this year, so
yes,
I've got quite a few.
Not all of them were worthy albums.
No, not all of them were worthy albums. There were a couple of disappointments, but I mean, like, I'll start with the one that I didn't submit to the review because they're not a '90s band. But I did mention in the Discord, but Gold's "The Shame Shall Not Be Mine," phenomenal album, band from the Netherlands, and a very personal album for the singer, but that was a great listen, and I highly recommend that one. But I mean, going through the list, I mean, Rammstein's their newest one was a worthy album. I mean, it didn't break any ground, but it was definitely comfort food for those who enjoy the band. The Crystal Method, that album was good as well, short and too many collaborators, but I mean, it was still good. Dubstar 2, that was a bit of a surprise for me. I wasn't expecting that one, but I mean, I shouldn't have been too surprised because half the album they had released singles during the pandemic over the past 2 years. Reese Fulber, that was definitely a surprise because he just released an album a year ago. I wasn't expecting one so soon. Erasures was good. Pigs was excellent. I was glad he is still recording music. So it definitely fills a void where one that I'll save for the disappointment and go with the contrast and when you bring those ones up. So, but yeah, it was definitely a good year for me.
Excellent. Bill, do you have some other picks for what you enjoyed new stuff out this year?
Oh, stuff out this year. So I'm kind of a late to everything kind of listener. I find things well after they've been released. I guess in terms of stuff that's come out this year, I'll mention a record that I've been listening to a lot recently by a band called Rogue Oliphant. They are a band out of New York, New Jersey, based around lyrics written by Pulitzer Prize-winning Irish poet Paul Muldoon. This is actually Paul's third band. He had a band called Racket in the 2000s, followed by Wayside Shrines, excuse me. There's only one album band, and then this current album group, Rogue Oliphant. This is their third record called Highlights of the Low Life. The band members include, in addition to Paul, we have Chris Harford, who had that's what I'm trying to say, solo record out on Elektra in 1992 called Beheaded. We have Ray Cuban, who plays with a lot of indie rock bands, including Electric Six, Chris Forsyth, and the Solar Motel Band, Dean Ween Group. Who else? We've got David Mansfield, who was part of Dylan's Rolling Thunder Review, Carter Reardon, who was in the Pogues, and Warren Zanes, who's in the Del Fuegos. And so the way the band really works is that Paul writes the lyrics and then sort of gives them to musicians and tells them to write music for the lyrics. And it's a pretty cool band project. I know it's been enriching for some of the folks in the band, just an opportunity to to stretch themselves in terms of, I think a lot of musicians are used to doing everything themselves. I mean, obviously there are people that are used to working with lyricists, famous examples, but this, I think, is an interesting collaboration with somebody who's specifically just working as the lyricist for the band, and kind of bringing together talent to create songs around it. And they do this great performance, mostly in New York, but also in Ireland, called Muldoon's Picnic, where Paul gathers together other poets and writers and the band, and it sort of goes back and forth between songs that the band performs, poems that Paul might recite, or other poets may recite. It's a pretty fantastic show. So it's been a fun record. Also getting a sense as to how the different songwriters in the group, all the musicians write songs around Paul's lyrics. Just interesting to hear what the different members of the band come up with in terms of songs. Not surprising, I suppose. Potter Reardon's songs, two of them are Celtic based. Dave Mansfield's is not Dylan-esque, but it's got more influence of a multi-instrumental stringed instrument performer. And there's some straight ahead rockers from Warren Zanes and Chris and Ray. It's just a lot of fun. And the crazy thing is that the record's coming out on vinyl. There's a 3-record set. You have to use a lot of vinyl to put 26 songs on one record, or on one album. So that's a lot of fun. And I think the album sort of made a soft release at the last Muldoon's Picnic show, which was in mid-November. But they're going to be continuing to tour and play, and this is the longest description ever.
That's okay. That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. That sounds really cool.
Sorry.
Because I've heard that name before, Paul Muldoon, and I don't know why. Maybe the Manic Street Preachers used him in a song or something like that. It's usually most of the people that are like poets or intellectuals, I find, because they're in song lyrics by like the Manic Street Preachers or Public Enemy or someone who's much smarter than me as a musician.
He wrote song lyrics for Warren Zevon before he died.
Oh, okay. Anyway. Interesting.
Among other people. Yeah.
And Zevon's definitely had amazing lyrics. So, Phil.
Well, mine aren't really necessarily 90s adjacent, and
that's okay.
For those listening, joining the Patreon and the Discord has been an embarrassment of riches for various reasons. And the recommendations that I've gotten from those channels have been amazing the last couple of years. And one band out of Chicago just blew me away with a 1-2 punch. They released a record in July and then a follow-up EP in November that just totally blew my mind. It's the Bishop's Daredevil Stunt Club. The album's called Please Stand By and the EP's called Vanishing Point. Just everything you want in a power pop band that doesn't, and it's not overt recycled, love songs. Which is just great. And I have found myself listening to both of those a lot in the last 6 months because the album came out in July. But yeah, that's been a huge highlight. Like, where has this band been all my life? They've been putting out stuff for almost 20 years, and oh, okay. I guess
you should explain that
for
them. They open for us. Don't get it.
Make sure we get that correct. What else, Phil? Do you have some other ones?
And on a more local level, I am in Boston. There's this band out of Western Mass called the Glad Machine. They put out a really good record a couple months ago called Hey, and highly recommended. Highly recommended.
Excellent. Chip, what are some other records that came out this year that you enjoyed?
So, like Ryan mentioned, Archers of Loaf album is great. Like Marissa mentioned, Afghan Whigs is going to be great no matter what. But the fact that Christopher Thorne from Blind Melon is now a full-fledged Afghan Whigs member and not like guest appearance by or touring member, but a full member of Afghan Whigs made it even better. I can't imagine what 1994 Chip would have thought about a Blind Melon Afghan Whigs kind of combo. I will mention one album that came out in the 90s that I didn't know that I picked up on Record Store Day just because. I don't usually do that, but the Brand New Heavies album that was reissued, I didn't know anything about them, picked that up. At least Record Store Day week, I listened to it a ton. I'm not sure that I've listened to it again since then, but it was something that had always kind of caught my eye. I liked the cover, it looked kind of old schoolish, kind of a jazz or blues or something album, and really like that when I listened to it. The two that I wrote down that are sure to raise a few eyebrows probably are Skid Row's album that came out this year. To me, it's not as good as like the first two records, but I listened to it a ton, and it definitely, like, if I throw that thing on, even though it's not Sebastian Bach singing. I don't necessarily think that the new singer sounds exactly like Sebastian Bach, so it's not like I feel like I'm transported back to 1990. But music style definitely reminds me of 1990-ish, so I wouldn't be at all surprised to hear it on the radio. And I'm sure I would have guessed that it was Skid Row had I heard it. The other one that came out this year that I sort of forgot about until I was looking at the different artists that I interviewed this year that Ian may raise some eyebrows at is Stabbing Westward put out a record this year. And Stabbing Westward is down to two original members, Christopher Hall and Walter Flackis, who's the keyboard player. I think Christopher spent a lot of time with his band, The Dreaming, and kept getting requests to play Stabbing Westward songs and kept asking when Stabbing Westward was going to be back and all that kind of stuff. And at this point, he was kind of like, people, the Dreaming name had probably a small niche audience, but people knew Stabbing Westward. And so it's easier to go back to the old name, even though a couple of guys in the band are from The Dreaming. Just like Skid Row, it's another band that, like, you throw a Stabbing Westward song from 1993 on or a Stabbing Westward song from 2022 on, and you can't really tell a difference. It sounds just like it did in 1990, whatever, maybe not 1993, 94, 95, but, it's good. I'm a sucker for nostalgia and stuff that reminds me of being younger, and both those Skid Row and Stabbing Westward albums made me think that I was in my 20s again.
Excellent.
Well, to Chip's credit, the singer on the Skid Row record is doing a very good approximation of Sebastian Bach.
Oh, sure. Warrant is my favorite, one of my favorite bands ever, period. Not even have to qualify it with from the 80s or 90s or hair metal or whatever. Like, Warrant's one of my favorite bands. But when Jani Lane passed away, they have a new singer, Robert Mason, and the 2017 album, Louder, Harder, Faster, is a really great rock record. But if I listened to that, if somebody played a single off that on the radio, I would never guess it was Warrant. Like, I didn't recognize it as Warrant. But yeah, Phil's right. I mean, the new singer definitely has enough enough Sebastian Bach-like qualities that I could tell that it was a Skid Row song or a Skid Row album.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you guys mentioned all those records. Our folks should check them out, and you should also, join our Patreon, because that's how you get access to our Discord, and where we talk about all these records. And as Phil mentioned, it's a wealth of information about new stuff coming out that not everybody's always aware of,
or new old stuff.
Yes, exactly. For some of the ones that I picked prior to last year, when the Iron Maiden record came out, I had not listened to a lot of really heavy music. I never had a metal phase as a kid. I had like a Def Leppard phase, but I never went to like, Metallica and Megadeth and stuff like that. So I was primed this year for a lot of hard rock, heavy metal type stuff. So some of the ones that I enjoyed were Saxon's album Carpe Diem. I liked the Napalm Death mini album that came out. Resentment is Always Seismic. The Scorpions Rock Believer, that was a really enjoyable record. Crowbar, which is more of a kind of a sludge metal band, their album Zero and Below was really fun. I mean, fun relatively speaking. It's punishingly heavy, but I found it really interesting. I also enjoyed what's the name of the band? Anmon Amarth, the Great Heathen Army. Again, that's like a Swedish like heavy metal, death metal band. But man, they are shredding, and it's just like I was just ready for some really heavy riffs this year. So that's kind of where my
Viking
brain
metal.
went. Huh?
Viking metal.
Yes, Viking metal. That's I think I've heard that before. And I also really liked, not quite as heavy, but I really liked the Cults album Under the Midnight Sun, and the one that I recently revisited. There's like a super group of members of My Chemical Romance, which is a band I was never really into. Coheed and Cambria, I never was really into them. Thursday, not a band I was ever really into. And the lead singers from a couple bands, one's called Circus Survive, and the other one's called Sausen, I believe. And they put out an album. Sausen?
Sausen, yeah.
Sausen, okay. I'm of course going to mispronounce that, but they put out an album called Past Lives under the name LS Dunes just a couple weeks back. It's really good. I mean, it's like you took the best player off of all these bands. It has this killer bass, like heavy bass tone. There's some really, really interesting guitar stuff with playing with like atmospherics and using like your volume switch on your guitar, like as the like Eddie Van Halen would do, basically. But imagine that in like a post-hardcore band. And it's just a really, really rockin' record for like 9 out of the or 11 out of the 12 songs. The other one that caught me off guard, which is a band I'd never heard of, is Blue October. Anybody familiar with that band? Phil says, yeah. Chip. They put out an album called Spinning the Truth Around, Part 1. I guess there's a second half to come out.
Just came out, yeah.
Yeah. I had never heard of them. I think I was getting them mixed up with was it Blue Monday? What was the band? There was another band with Blue in the title, and not Blues Traveler. That's not the one I'm thinking of. But there was another band with Blue, or maybe I'm thinking of Orgy covering.
But there I don't know if there is anymore, but there was a Blue October in the UK.
Okay.
It's been around longer than the US.
So this was sort of like
thinking.
What?
That's what I'm thinking of, the UK version.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Blue October's album is sort of like there's like a little bit of more Cheeba and Massive Attack, like this trip hop element, but played with live drums. There's some really atmospheric stuff, and then you have like this vocalist that kind of reminded me of Guy Garvey from Elbow, with sort of this rich voice. I saw it mentioned multiple times as honey-kissed. That's how they described his voice. It's very intimate with the way it's recorded, and he uses it in very interesting ways. Sometimes he stings in a more staccato voice that's almost like hip hopish, and then sometimes he's crooning, like straight up crooning. But it works somehow, and the instrumentation, I think, is what nails it. It's very mid tempo to slow, very atmospheric. It's a chill record for the most part, and I had never heard of the band before, and I really enjoyed that. So, I'm gonna throw some out there and see if anybody listened to these records. Did anybody check out the new Death Cab record that came out this year? Nope, nobody. Is Death Cab transitioned to like Weezer status that I wasn't aware of? Do people not like them anymore?
I listened to it. I listened to it once through. I have a history with that band, so like I'm always sort of at least gonna give it one go around. And honestly, it's probably the best thing I've heard from them in years. You know, like it's a little bit more up tempo. I mean, there's some like pretty cool guitar stuff that's going on, and definitely feels more of like a rock band than maybe the last few records have felt. There's a weird song where it's like spoken word, and I can't really understand where that's coming from, but otherwise, it's an okay record. I feel like they lost something when Chris Walla left the band.
Yeah.
There was like a just like I feel like Chris was really interested in making really unique sounding records, and I actually got to record a record with him once and watch him work, and he's a really like kind of a genius behind the boards, and he's very, at least then when I recorded with him, like very traditionalist in how he approached things in terms of like no digital, fully analog, splicing tape together, like really cool stuff. So I just feel like they lost something when he left, and I haven't been as interested since, but for what it's worth, I think this new one's, decent enough.
Ryan, while I have you, you're my go-to for Guided by Voices. As usual, there's multiple Guided by Voices records to discuss from this year. Did you check any of them out? Do you have any opinions on those?
Bro, you know that I listen to them.
I know.
Hi.
Wait, are you a bigger fan than
Oh,
than
probably
Ryan?
not bigger than Ryan, but I'm there. I'm up there.
Here's what I'll say is it's gotten to the point where I can't remember a fucking single song on any of the last, like, I don't know, 7 records, but I know they're all great.
Yeah.
It's this blur of like, I feel like the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 records, there's just this prog element that has like entered the picture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where a song will go through like 6 different tempo changes in 3.5 minutes, and it's just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
But I'm totally into it. I think it's awesome.
Same.
Well, they had 3 records out, just to refresh everybody's memory. In March, there was Crystal Nun Cathedral.
Yep.
And then in July, there was Tremblers and Goggles by Rank.
Yep.
And then in October, I believe it was older material that came out on Scalping the Guru. But don't worry, because in January, La La Land comes out.
Yeah, no one's worried, man. Everyone knows. Everyone knows it's gonna happen, and everyone knows that it'll be great, even if you can't sing a second of it.
Like since 2017 or so, Ryan may be able to attest to this too. Like they have found the right combination with their sound engineer. Their live sound engineer is their producer, and they've just been able to be putting out very consistently good records.
They're robots, man.
Yeah.
What else they do? They drink beer and they make music.
What a life.
Richard Waterman could not join us because it's like 4 in the morning.
3 a.m. there.
Yeah, 3 a.m., something like that. Anyway, it's late. But he did leave us a nice list. Some of the albums we've mentioned, but some we haven't. He mentioned the Afghan Whigs. He also mentioned Annual Nose by the Trail of Dead's album Bleed Here Now. Armor for Sleep by the Rain Museum. Not familiar with that band. I want to get them. I'm going to confuse them with the Rain Sanction or the Rain. There's another Rain band.
Parade.
The Rain Parade. Big Rex EP 7.2. The Black Crows EP 1972, which I believe was an all covers EP. The Black Moods Into the Night. Not familiar with that one. Blood Incantations Time Wave Zero. Yes. Chip is also nodding his head. This was the most unexpected of my favorite albums of the year. I'm sure Chip is probably the same way.
Yeah, I think I got familiar with them because of the Discord group. There's a plug to join the Discord group, and I checked out some of their earlier stuff, and it's like this really proggy, heavy metal. And I love metal, but like it might have been a little bit too much for me. But that Time Wave Zero is like the most chill Tangerine Dream meets Pink Floyd napping record ever. Like I just. It's like, yeah, it's really quiet and it's really ambient sounding. And that's another band that I interviewed, and super, they're total metal dudes who, just happen to make this completely ambient kind of record that I think some of the hardcore fans hate it. And some people who maybe have a broader range of listening habits liked it a lot. But that was
it's like the opposite of Metal Machine music.
Yes.
Or Neil Young's Arc. Like it's the complete other end of that. But I agree. It's a great napping record for people in their 40s and 50s who like to take naps that might listen to this show. There you go. Even if you're 30s, I encourage you to start taking naps. They'll do wonders for you. Richard also mentioned Cave-In's Heavy Pendulum, which I agree that was a really good record. The Comet is Coming, Hyperdimensional Being.
Yeah. I listened to that, and it's an album that I can't describe. It's like this crazy, it's like kind of jazz, but kind of not jazz, kind of like scrunky, kind of
free jazz.
Kind of, yeah. That's something that like I don't know how to describe, and it kind of caught me off guard because I had read about it, and it's a really interesting listen.
Got it. Someday by Dear Seattle. Diamond Star Halos by Def Leppard. Did anybody else enjoy that record? I thought it was okay.
I liked it. I think that there were like a couple in there. They do like a country duet with some country singer.
Alison Krauss.
Yeah, I could skip over that one, but
well, it's a decent record provided you don't listen to the lyrics.
Wait, are you saying they've fallen since their lyrical height of Pour Some Sugar on Me?
Well, no, it's like even simpler than Pour Some Sugar on Me. That's
Pour Sugar Me.
Yeah, Pour Sugar Me. Yeah, something like that.
He also mentioned Earthless, Night Parade of 100 Demons. Eve 6's Hyper Relevisitation. Goodbye June's See Where the Night Goes. Greg Puciato, Mirrorcell.
That's a great. The last two you mentioned are great. Goodbye June. I interviewed those guys this year, and they're just like a good modern classic rock band, if that makes sense. But the new record, when I interviewed them, the first thing I said to them was, it sounds like you made the best AC/DC record of the last 30 years. And they said that during the pandemic, they really like pulled records out of their collection, out of the parents' collection. And that that was what they grew up on. And they didn't flat out say like, we wanted to make an AC/DC record, but it sounds like an AC/DC record and it's great.
They pulled them out of their parents' record collection?
Yeah, they're young guys. They're younger guys.
They're young and...
Hey,
and they toured. they're from Nashville and they tour with I saw them open for Whiskey Myers in Columbus, and I left before Whiskey Myers came on, so I don't really know what Whiskey Myers sounds like. But they have that kind of Southern rock, like they fit into that crowd. But then they've toured with like Rival Sons and Greta Van Fleet and other bands like that I can't, Dirty Honey, and like they're all part of that genre of bands that could have come out in the 70s or 80s or 2022.
Got it.
And Greg, I don't know how to say his last name either. He was in Dillinger Escape Plan, and he put out a record. He's put out a couple records. He is in Jerry Cantrell's touring band, and I think he might have some songs on Jerry Cantrell's record that came out this year. He put out a record last year that is like equal parts, oh my God, like Marilyn Manson, Deftones, Nine Inch Nails. Like it's got all that kind of like that angsty aggro rock sound to it. Alice in Chains, like it. But yeah, that's another. Yeah, he's putting out some good stuff.
This is a band that gets mentioned on the Discord a lot, King Buffalo, and their album Regenerator. Am I right? Is there? I believe there's a Buffalo band. It's not Buffalo Tom that gets talked about. I think it's King Buffalo. Museum of Light by Horizon, Georgiana Naked by the Naked Gypsy Queens, Porcupine Trees Closer / Continuation, Gnosis by Russian Circles, Working Men's Club album Fear, and that's it. Just thanks for another great year. Right back at you, Rich. And we like the t-shirt shot. Thank you for sharing that in the Discord.
Naked Gypsy Queens they toured with the Black Moods. That was on his list. And another band that I interviewed, they changed singers though, and they haven't recorded anything that I know of with the new singer. The old singer, I'm looking around, maybe Phil and maybe Tim. Looks like their old singer looks like Jakey Lee, Ozzy's guitars and from Badlands. Big black hair. I mean, he again, Naked Gypsy Queen is another band that totally fits into that. All those bands I was mentioning before. The new guy is like 19 and has blonde hair and and he's from California and he's kind of a surfer dude. And so, just from a look perspective, I'm not sure if it's going to match what their sound was with the other guy, but I think there was something going on in that band because the singer was.
I think Richard Waterman expressed that concern himself.
Yeah.
Any other albums before we wrap this up? Any other albums people want to mention?
I did remember a 90s adjacent, mainly because the band members were likely born in the 90s. A band called Noiseheads. Richard Waterman recommended them a couple years ago. They put out an EP this past summer called Somehow, partially recorded by Steve Albini.
There's a name everybody knows.
Yes. Very, very kind of old school sounding, like grungy stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Explosives album, Ryan. There was also John Reese put out his first solo quote unquote record, Ride the Wild Night, under the name Swami John Reese. And that's pretty good. I mean, it's what you expect from John Reese. It's good. Did you check that out, Ryan?
I did, Tim, and I wasn't blown away by it. I don't think I like John Reese's voice. I love his guitar. I love his guitar playing, I think he's like a super inventive guitar player, but I prefer him as the guitarist. That's just my, whether it's Jehu or Hot Snakes or this Plosives thing, like that's kind of my, that's
Interesting. Okay, because I got introduced to them through Rocket from the Crypt, so the voice has always been the thing that like I thought was cool about them.
I feel weird about saying that out loud because I'm pretty sure John Reese could kick the shit out of me.
It doesn't seem like the guy would do that.
It just seems like he's like the kind of guy that might have like definitely have a switchblade, you know, or
Maybe.
something. So you know, John, if you hear this, forget it. Forget everything.
The odds of that happening, very good. Did anybody check out the 2 Jack White albums that came out this year? No. Wow, Jack White.
Not entirely, just snippets.
Got it.
It's the same for me as well. I didn't listen to the whole thing. Just...
What about the Liam Gallagher album? Come on, you know.
Not
Nope.
yet.
We don't. Wait a minute, Marissa.
I actually
aren't
liked
you...
the first 2 Liam Gallagher solo records.
Yeah, Marissa, you're a big.
I have not had the opportunity to give it my full undivided attention and really listen to it and process it. So I have to abstain from weighing in.
Isn't there a song on that record that Dave Grohl helped him write and plays like drums and maybe bass, and he might be the whole band on the song. But
it's called Everything's Electric.
This just reaffirms to me, by the way, that Liam is the good brother and Noel is the evil brother. Like they're both nightmares and insane. But if Dave Grohl is joining together with Liam, like I mean he's like such a good dude.
There was a solo record that came out this year that was kind of under the radar, but I enjoyed it. It was Billy Howardell's solo record. He's best known as the guitar player in A Perfect Circle, and it doesn't sound anything like A Perfect Circle. It sounds like he listened to a lot of Depeche Mode and The Cure and wanted to make a very gloomy, dark, atmospheric record. It's very unusual and it's very cool if you like that sort of gothic influenced sound.
Did you go to that show, Tim, in Columbus?
No, I did not.
So it was supposed to be at the Newport Music Hall, which is about 1,500, 1,800 seat. And it got moved to A&R Music Bar, which is probably 250-ish, 300-ish. And I didn't go, but I heard reports that I don't know that it was even half full.
Wow.
But I think, you know, while people know his name, maybe overestimating how much weight that name carries, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, because that band hasn't been really active. There's been one album in the last 10 years.
Yeah, but you're right.
There's also the Tool effect with Maynard as well.
Yeah,
Perfect Circle.
But you're right. That album is very Depeche Mode-y, kind of that 80s synth kind of rock sound.
Yeah. All right. Unless somebody wants to jump in with a few last picks.
So I don't have album picks, but I have this list of 90s bands that I saw this year. And there was a lot of them. And I will say the biggest thing I'm thankful for, I'm wearing the t-shirt for those listening. You obviously can't see it. Quicksand played in Columbus, Ohio for the first time since like probably 1996. They reunited, I don't even know how long ago, 5-10 years ago. And they've played everywhere but Columbus. I think they did play one of the Rock on the Range or Sonic Temple, but I wasn't going to go, buy a festival pass to see a 25-minute set from Quicksand on a side stage. So I got to see them and it was amazing, but I'm going to I'll read this list really fast, but 90s bands that I saw this year include Quicksand. I saw the 9 Inch Nails, Breeders, Black Keys, Joe Walsh show a couple weeks ago. Afghan Whigs, I went to Cincinnati to see. I saw Slaughter. I saw Ministry headline show. I saw Skid Row, Warrant, and Winger. I saw Jimmy Eat World. And I think that's it. And then big for the Columbus crew, Royal Crescent Mob, which were more of an 80s band, is reuniting for their first show since the 80s, since I think early 90s maybe.
I think their last album came out in like 90 or 91.
Yeah, for people who don't know Royal Crescent Mob, they were a Columbus band who were signed to Sire Records. They toured with, like the Replacements and B-52s. They were definitely like a funk band.
They were the Midwest's Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah, and the story goes that they were signed to Sire and the Chili Peppers were on Warner Brothers. And, the long told story, and I don't know if any of it's true, is that basically Sire was part of Warner Brothers, and that I think somebody at the label said, we've got 2 funk rock bands. Which one do we go for? And Chili Peppers got the time and the attention and the money, the tour support, and the Royal Crescent Mob didn't, and Royal Crescent Mob got dropped. Happy Chichester ended up starting Howlin' Maggie, so we got something good out of that. The reason for the reunion is a little sad. The drummer Carlton Smith has cancer, and I think it might be incurable cancer. The singer Dave Ellison had, he had cancer as well. I want to maybe prostate cancer. He has been a tour manager. Like the list of artists that he's been a tour manager for is extremely impressive, but he didn't do anything as far as I know musically other than be a tour manager.
He went right into tour managing.
Yeah. So that show's coming up in a couple of weeks. It's going to be super exciting to see them. And then later this week, I'm going to see Wasp and Armored Saint. Both bands I'm seeing for the first time ever, even though they've been around for 40 years.
I was happy I got to see Sunny Day Real Estate a couple months ago. That was sweet.
Is that with Jason Narducci on bass?
No, he was actually playing extra guitar.
Oh, he's playing extra guitar. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
They have a separate bass, separate side bass player.
Okay. Oh,
I forget the name.
Gotcha. Well, like you, I saw the Mannix and Suede, Phil, and then the only other show I went to this year was Iron Maiden.
Oh yeah, and Duran Duran. I saw Duran Duran this summer too.
Nice.
I went to the Pet Shop Boys in New Order, which Pet Shop Boys completely stole the show. I mean, I wasn't surprised. I was expecting that. And then I was able to make it for the final North American show, which was in Toronto for Front 242. So I was happy to see that and meet the band again, get some more photos. And then after the last show last year, I went for Nights Are Up, but unfortunately Douglas McCarthy wasn't on stage. It was just Bon Harris, but he did a great job just by himself. And then a couple weeks ago, they're not 90s, but it was Kaylin Mikla with Kanga. And that was a great show. Kaylin Mikla, they've opened for The Cure a couple of times. And, Robert Smith personally selected them, and they were quite pleased about that. Well, first they thought he was joking or it was a spoof email or something. So their manager's like, no, you better get back to this. So that was it for shows for me. But we'll see.
Marissa, I know you went to 7 Afghan Whig shows. Did you make it to any other shows this year?
Yes, I did. And I'm trying to think if any of them, aside from that Spoon gig at Baby's All Right in Brooklyn, were 90s bands that are appropriate for discussion here. But I was trying to minimize or do like show triage, aligning everything with like my vaccine shots and just, trying to be extra cautious. And, aside from that big crazy trip following the Whigs around and Spoon, and I missed Too Much Joy, which was a bummer. They played a one-off show at Mercury Lounge. I can't really think of anybody else who applies. I'm going to be seeing the Cherry Poppin' Daddies in January. How's that for a forgotten 90s band?
I think we're ready for another swing revival, like a swing revival.
Oh God, why?
No.
I love it. That shit is unironically my
keep the last wave going.
I mean, there's like 5 emo waves. Why shouldn't we have like that many swing revivals?
Believe it or not, I think that they are actually, when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of songwriting and performing, they're a more respectable band than they get credit for. With that said, they always do some kind of like ASCAP showcase in the city in January. So they're the next like DMO appropriate live gig that I'll be attending, and well, maybe I'll have some thoughts on that when we do the 2023 roundup at the end of next year.
Yeah, definitely. Ryan or Bill, would you like to share any concerts that you attended this year? Before we wrap this up.
Yeah, I saw Sunny Day Real Estate, and it was fantastic. They blew the power during In Circles, and the show just like ended abruptly, but it was somehow like the most emo shit to ever happen, like during the most emo song probably ever written. And I saw Pavement, and they were super good. Like, I saw them a few times in the 90s. I saw them on the Terror Twilight tour. Or not, yeah. And I saw them on their last tour, and they seemed totally miserable playing, you know. And they were like joyful and bouncing around on stage and joking and having fun and just like playing loose. And it was just like, but also very tight at the same time. And that was a great show. And then I actually went to Toronto by myself a couple of months ago to see this band called the Killjoys, who were like a Canadian power pop kind of band. Never really did anything here in the States, but because I live so close to Canada in Detroit, they used to play them on the radio all the time because our alternative radio station was based in Windsor across the Detroit River. So
yep.
They were a big band for me, and I saw them a month and a half ago or something like that in Toronto, and they were awesome. So those are some 90s gigs that I saw. Tim, back to you.
Well, thanks. Bill, did you make it out to any 90s gigs at all?
No. That's a big bummer, right?
That's all right.
I mean, the last one I went to was Blue, BLEU, but he didn't really get started till the early 2000s.
But he broke through in 2000.
Yeah, so right after.
Yeah,
but
yeah, that was the Redhead re-release show, right? Yeah.
All right. Well, this is a good spot at the hour and a half mark that we can say thank you to all you guys. Especially because we're down my co-host today, and I appreciate you making it such a strong episode in spite of our limitations of me having to do all the announcing. So thank you to Chip, Phil, Ryan, Marissa, Bill, and Ian. I hope you guys all have a excellent rest of the year, and I look forward to doing this again in 300 and something days, 360 perhaps 5 maybe days. We'll see. Well, no, that would be a Monday then, right? Because it goes back one day. We don't do recordings on Mondays. So 64 days. Sorry, so put that on the calendars. I want to remind everybody to go to the Patreon. That's how you join our Discord, where we chat about music every day, among other things, possibly recipes or show pictures of our dogs and cats. And also, if you go to Patreon through dmounion.com or digmeoutunion.com, you can also read the box newsletter, which you can sign up for and receive every week with new releases of 80s and 90s relevant albums, movies, books, TV shows, and the like. And if you like what you heard, you can leave us some positive feedback over at Apple Podcasts. So thanks to everybody for spending this Sunday evening with me. And for them, I'm Tim, and we're out, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.